I had to forgive the Crown for its apology before it apologised prior to the day. So for me that was a spiritual thing. That I couldn't go into that day waiting to hear the apology, see how I feel, and receive it in my heart, decide whether I forgive or not. I did all of that before the day. I had to. For me.
This is Down to Earth Conversations, where we hear from ordinary people who are helping to bring a bit of heaven down to earth. Kia ora, nau mai, haere mai. Welcome to another episode of Down to Earth Conversations with me, your host, Andy Dixon. It's a very special episode today as we prepare to remember the Crown invasion of Parihaka on November the 5th, 1881. If you don't know the story of Parihaka, you may wish to pause the episode and follow the links in the show notes to read a little about what happened. But the short of it was that the Crown ordered troops to invade Parihaka in response to the people of Parihaka showing active, non-violent resistance to the confiscation of their lands. And the response of the people of Parihaka was still kindness and intentional non-violence. Today's guest, Puna Wano-Bryant, is from Parihaka, and a couple of years ago she led the team who negotiated a Crown apology for the atrocities committed in its name. With a background in law and arts, Puna has been actively pursuing justice for Māori in a range of ways for many years. We talk about her understanding her identity as Māori, her passion for justice, Māori wards in local elections, and what it was like to negotiate with the Crown and receive an apology, and then what? It's a deeply moving kōrero. This is episode 60 of Down to Earth Conversations. Here's Puna Wano-Bryant. It's my privilege today to be having a kōrero with Puna Wano-Bryant. Kia ora, Puna. Welcome to the podcast.
Kia ora, Andy. Tēnā koe.
And nohia koe. Who are you? Where are you from? Tell us a bit about yourself.
Ai, tēnā koutou. Ko Taranaki, Te Ātiawa, Ngāti Mutunga, Ngāti Maniapoto, me Ngāti Awa o ku iwi. No Taranaki ahau, no Parihaka Papakainga, me Mururau Patu. Ko ku pahake, ko Mākere Wharehoka, me John Waretini Wano, no roto o Ngāti Awa, Whakatāne, te Pāroa. Ko hau tēnei tō manga I tēnei rā, te mihi atu kia koutou katoa. Down to Earth Conversations. Nā koutou.
You are involved in a heap of different things, some of which we'll touch on today. But firstly, what's the mama life like for you?
Oh, kia ora, Andy. Yeah, it's added to the joy, that's for sure. And it's a humbling experience being a parent.
Yeah.
And my husband Carlos, he does the drop-offs and the pickups, which I kind of envy. But the arrangement we have is that I'm the, 9 to 5 and 5 to 9, we call it. And I love that, that I can continue on with my mahi in my community. He does all the pickups and
it's actually similar to what we're doing it. For our girls, Bex did all of that while I was working, but now we've swapped roles. So
nice.
I'm still working with Bex. We've got our own business, but I do all the drop-offs and pickups for kindy and everything, and
it's great, hey?
Run the girls to swimming and hip-hop and whatever else.
Oh, wow. I love it when I can. I get the chance to. I jump at it. But every day at 3 o'clock while I'm, in my office or with my team, I'm thinking, he'll be picking her up. And, but, it's I wouldn't even call it a juggle because Carlos is dedicating to that mahi for us, It's just our shared commitment to our to the life of Hine Maiora, our daughter, and and she's used to it. That they get used to it. When I come in the door at 5:30, she's just full of smiles and love, and I love that. It's probably the favourite part of my day. It's not waving her goodbye, but when I get home and she's just so excited, eh? Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Now you whakapapa Māori, but you also whakapapa Pākehā. You've got a Māori mum and a Pākehā dad. And I know a number of
Yeah,
people, including our
definitely.
mutual friend Jay Ruka, actually, who grew up with that same kind of
Yeah.
scenario with a Māori parent and a Pākehā parent. Um, and like for
Mm.
him, he grew up with little connection to our Māori. Did you grow up with a strong sense of your Māori identity, or is that something that came down the track?
Awesome part-time. I'm fortunate, blessed to have a strong connection. Now, I'm born in Hawera, where all our whānau were living and working at the time, and had a strong connection to my marae and, marae life, iwi hapu life, and the hāhi, the whakapono that my grandparents chose for us. And their parents was hāhi katorika, the Catholic faith, and so we were immersed in what we would call the Māori Catholic movement, which is still very strong. So we got to learn a lot of our, tikanga and reo through the Catholic Church. All of the ministers were Pākehā and priests, but they would deliver mass in te reo Māori. And the te reo wasn't the best, when you look back and you're like, oh, there's a lot of mispronunciation going on, but nevertheless it was an exposure to the importance of the reo. And those priests were very important to us. They married us and baptised us and buried us, so and still do. So that's a strong influence here for us. And then Mum met who I call Dad, not my birth father, and he was a kiwi fruit grower. So we moved from Taranaki to the Bay of Plenty in Tauranga Moana, and I did all of my schooling there, high schooling, before I went to university. So Dad managed, he's Pākehā, a papa, Steve Bryant, from the Manawatu fielding, and he managed orchards owned by Māori and corporations. So he was Pākehā working for Māori, and so we were brought up on Papakainga in Tauranga, at Tamapāhore and then in Matapihi. So he got to raise Māori children, my younger brother and sister and myself, and be employed by Māori and see the changes in Māori leadership over that time. And also Tamapāhore, where we grew up, was a strong rātana marae, as many of them are in Tauranga Moana. So we got another level of exposure to whakapono Māori-based, faith-based movements.
Did the Rātana crew do the full brass band pōwhiri?
Full regalia, loved it.
I went to one of those a few years ago now down here.
Yeah.
And I'd been to a number of pōwhiri for a bunch of different things, but I'd never experienced anything like that. That's quite unique, eh?
Yeah, it's really profound, It speaks to our creativity, our musicality, our love for colours. There's this perception that, it's just red, black and white, but out come the purples and the blues and you name it. And, for me as a Taranaki child raised in Tauranga, my mother was a staunch Taranaki woman. And I was like, I want to be a rātana. And I want to be a nanahira, and I want to be in the band, and I want to be in the reo. And she's like, no, you are a Taranaki woman being raised in Tauranga. Never forget that. But that's not our faith. That's not what we do. Our role here is to support, not lead. So, but then the Tamapāhore whānau encouraged me into leadership, which was from a young age, which was really interesting.
Yeah, awesome. And so you've been involved now with pursuing justice for Māori for quite a while. At what point in your life did you decide that was something you wanted to give your life to?
Yeah, at a very young age. So Mum told me from a very young age I was all about that identifying those things, contradictions in parents and
right.
in life in general, which was Mum was a very strong woman, but very quiet spoken. So to have this child who pointed all of these things out, not just for me, but for her, Mum, no, don't let that person talk to you like that, and so on. or something at the supermarket. No, you don't get treated like that, Mum. She found really embarrassing because she wasn't the sort of person who would fight against those things, everyday things. And this is a statement I wrote down when I was 14. I always laugh. I'm like, oh my gosh, look at you, Gil. Was that I will settle for nothing less than the complete liberation and respect for and of all things Māori, right?
At 14?
At 14,
Wow.
I wrote it down. And then there was the replica of the Endeavour sailing around New Zealand at the time. And so I was up in arms about that, as a symbol of oppression. And Dad being, Pākehā, I was like, well, hang on, that's a symbol of my identity. And if it didn't sail past these shores, I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't be your father. So just, humble yourself as you grow in your righteousness. And it was good to have that mix of a strong mother who, like I said, wouldn't step out in front like I did, but she was very, very clear about what was right and wrong. And then Dad, who tempered it with humility. I don't care if you have letters behind your name with degrees. I don't care what you do. It's how you are as a person that matters to me. So that's the teenage Puna that got me to that point.
That must have set you up really well for everything you've gone on to do, that you had that really strong sense of justice or injustice, and a desire for justice, but you also had that calm voice saying, hang on, think about it this way as well. Not saying, no, you're wrong, don't think that, but going, okay, just take in the full picture and now go and do your mahi. I
like that.
What an amazing privilege. Yeah.
Yeah, you can look at your own nose, can't you? Some people call it navel gazing or whatever you want. And I think with justice that you can get very linear in your thinking. And there is a time to be linear because we have to be focused when it comes to issues of justice. We can't be all over the place. But in terms of your own emotional maturity and spiritual maturity, you have to know the full picture. Yeah, it's really important.
You did go on to get some letters after your name. You did a degree with law and arts.
Yeah.
That's a fascinating double major. What was there a specific plan for that, or did you just like both of them and go, oh well, I'm here, let's do it?
Bit of both. We're young when we choose these things for ourselves. So young, choosing the pathway for our life. I mean, goodness, the gravity of that decision for young ones is too much. But yeah, so it was a bit of both, to be honest. Oh, that's cool. But also, I wasn't a maths person, not a science person, definitely into the languages and the arts. But see, I did, so hence the Bachelor of Arts. Law was the justice thing through and through. But in 95, after my 7th form, I came home to Taranaki to study the reo. That was my first priority. And it was at the time when you could do an outpost degree first year of a Bachelor of Arts through Waikato University. So I was able to come home, learn the Taranaki mita and tikanga, and then go back to Waikato University the following year and pick up law and carry on with the BA. And it's important, just with the Te Reo journey, recognising the work of Ngā Tamatua, the important week we have next week to commemorate 50 years of the petition for Te Reo Māori, that, when you aren't brought up with it as a first language, which we weren't, you have to dedicate your life to it, really. And doing it in a piecemeal fashion is really difficult. And other friends of mine who did their first degree, their career degree, and then were just finding it hard to put reo in as a supporting subject. I said, you've got to do it. You've got to immerse yourself. You've got to go for a full year, do what I did. And many of them actually went back and did it that way. And
when you finished studying, was it straight into mahi for iwi and stuff, or did you have some time doing some other things first?
So the first 5 years was in private practice, Māori issues law firms, Walters Williams, which is the law firm of the now Supreme Court Sir Justice Joe Williams, and I was under Lane Harvey, who is now one of the few Māori High Court judges. He was sworn in last year, a descendant of Te Kooti. And so in private practice for 5 years. And then I went to London for 5.5 and worked in planning as a planning lawyer in London boroughs, councils. And it was always connected to home. Actually, when I was in London, I took that as the opportunity to learn waiata, especially our songs of lament, the long ones that take ages to learn. In London, I learned most of those because it was my time out, so to speak, but not my time off. And then came home and did consulting and came straight back to iwi. So no longer a practicing lawyer, but I certainly saved the iwi some money.
Yeah, true.
Being able to identify those legal issues before you go to someone with a clean slate and say, help me, is really important.
And so how long have you been based back in Taranaki now?
Over 10 years now. Yeah, 11 years.
And what are the sorts of things you've got involved with over that time? Because you seem to be someone who's got your finger in a bunch of pies.
Oh, yeah. So just with the career pathway stuff, it was first Taranaki iwi pre-settlement with the Crown, and then Department of Conservation while I worked on the parihaka reconciliation. So I could focus. I didn't want to work within iwi and work on the parihaka reconciliation. I really needed to have one foot in something else while I did that. And 2 years at Department of Conservation as a partnerships ranger. That didn't get out in the field, so ranger's pretty, not an accurate term.
Yeah, right.
My boots didn't get dirty. It was great to work with the Crown, for the Crown. Really, important exercise if you've got the fortitude for it. And then back to Taranaki iwi for post-settlement, so a new post-settled iwi. And then wanted to share myself more with Taranaki whānui, so I'm now General Manager of the shareholder environmental team at Parinene Iki Waitotara. We're responsible for about 23,000 hectares of whenua. Most of it's wrapped up in reserves that we don't control, but some of it we actively manage and provide benefits to our people.
Awesome. One of the issues that you have been involved in a bit as well is continuing the conversation towards getting Taranaki Māori wards on council. And I had the privilege last year of speaking to Matua Andrew Judd on the podcast. Cool. and hearing his story of, I guess his heartbreaking story in some ways of trying unsuccessfully to get the Māori wards. Well, they got a Māori ward and then they got it taken off them through petition and stuff, and but also he faced a whole lot of vitriol and just animosity, getting spat in the face because of his support for Māori and for this idea of shared leadership and having a Māori voice at the table. I guess what's your involvement been around it, and what's the experience been like for you as a Māori in that space?
Ngā mihi, Andy, and acknowledge the work of tangata tiriti like yourself and Anaru, and one, just understanding the issues, 2, caring about them, 3, putting your hand to the plough is tangata tiriti in whatever way you can. And every little bit and every big bit is important, just to acknowledge all of you. So, I get to see Matua Anaru heaps. It's really cool. Yeah. And he's still, suffering the effects of being a tangata tiriti in that space, because there's a different kind of abuse that occurs from the oppressor and the aggressor when Pākehā stand up to these issues. It's not the same as the Māori experience, but it is nevertheless very, very harmful. My experience is the first time I had worked with tangata tangata tiriti in a linking arms kind of way. And I did it deliberately, because if you listen to my pathway previously, it's very insular. Even when I went to London, I was in the London Māori Club, I went everywhere with Māoris. And I'm like, go all the way to London to hang out with more Māori.
Yeah.
Come on. But it's what we do, and we love, and it's us. But I thought, right, with this Māori water shoe, which I am going to put my hand to the plough with, I want to sit in arms with Pākehā. One, allow them to help, because you get a bit self-righteous with some of this justice stuff. You're like, no, only I can, and only I should. You're just used to it. You're just used to doing the hard work yourselves. And my eyes were opened, and it was the most beautiful experience that I've ever had. And in the quest for justice for Māori, I underestimated the ability of tangata tiriti to, I guess, be a voice for Māori, actually, and in a different way to Andrew, the way that he did. Oh, we'll write that. No, we'll put that submission together. Puna, you just check it. And I'm like, oh, this is a bit weird. Okay. But honestly, the beauty that came out of it was incredible, and the learning. And we continue on to battle on all fronts together. We were successful in that the law was changed to get rid of those petitions. It was an incredible day. And it was the first time that I had seen, apart from the treaty settlements, which are a form of legislative recognition for a grievance, that doesn't go anywhere near, far enough to remediate the grievance. We know that, disproportionate to the gravity of the crime. That I said, hey, it's awesome that we've won, but actually this isn't the norm. Because I've never been involved in a short amount of time, which was about 6 months, from raising the issue to fighting the issue to going through the legislative process to the law being scrapped. It's not a regular occurrence. In fact, you go into these things battling, preparing not to win, but that's not why you go into battle. And that's why protest and occupation are still a part of the kete of tools of resistance, because we go into these legislative processes or whatever it is, courts, not expecting to win. Yeah.
Man, there's so many rabbit holes I'd love to chase down from all of that korero, but before we run out of time, I do want to talk about parihaka.
Of course.
And that's something that, as you mentioned at the start, that you've been heavily involved in. You whakapapa to parihaka, as you were chair of the Parihaka Papakainga Trust, and so you were part of that team negotiating the apology from the government for the illegal and frankly atrocious actions that the Crown and its soldiers did to parihaka back in 1881. There's a whole lot of places that I'll put some links in the show notes and stuff. There's a whole lot of places people can go to learn more about the story of parihaka and what happened, so we don't need to go over the whole thing now. But there are some people who won't have heard of it, some overseas listeners, and actually probably some New Zealand listeners as well. So do you just want to give us a really brief, this is what parihaka is, and this is the events that occurred there in 1881?
Yeah, certainly. So, we had the land wars here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, the musket wars. So they were violent wars, let's put it that way. And so the Crown would negotiate with Māori to take over the settlement of lands. If Māori said no, they would then invade violently. And if Māori resisted against that, they would be classified as being in rebellion and their entire lands confiscated. So the different ways of being in rebellion were, of course, taking up arms against Her Majesty and her subjects. So many of the tribes throughout Aotearoa were subjected to that raupatu regime, confiscation regime. here in Taranaki, our tupuna were at the time going through a spiritual journey with the Bible, with one of the mission schools. So they were, as you identified earlier, identifying with the plight of the ancient Israelites and holding on to that hope, and realised that they had to do it a different way in order to achieve freedom for their people, so that they would put down their weapons and unteach violence, a violent response, which was very innate in us as a people. So they came up with, they call it non-violent passive resistance in the academic term, but I call it active resistance, because to lay down your weapons in a very innate way of doing things required a lot of discipline. So parihaka became a source of refuge and a place of refuge for people all around the motu, because they were looking for other ways of responding to the violence also, having already lost their lands, many of them. So lots of tribes came to parihaka, and it was set up as a place of passive resistance for the nation. Well, the Crown didn't like that. So they deemed Taranaki, the entire rohe of Taranaki, to be in rebellion. But prior to that, they did invade parihaka, because one of the forms of passive resistance was to plough the lands and to put up fences overnight when the soldiers were sleeping. And, people call that affirmative action, all those different forms of protest. But for us, it was us living as if the land was still ours and that it hadn't been confiscated.
Yeah.
So the ploughing and fencing campaigns of 1879 and 1880 led to the justification of the Crown to deem us to be in rebellion, and they entered parihaka in November 1881 to forcibly evict and remove our men, to send them to prisons down south without trial, and for crimes that were more criminal consequences than affirmative action, civil consequences, and left the women behind. The Crown troops, in the aftermath of the invasion, raped our women, and that results in our generations today. And then there was what we call military occupation in Taranaki, certainly the coast in Taranaki, for some 20 years, up to and after 1881. And there was separate pieces of legislation created to imprison tohu te whiti, to dismantle our profits, to dismantle the leadership. They were 16 months in the South Island without trial. And then there was a pass system. So when tohu te whiti and the prisoners came back from south, they you could only get entry into parihaka based on the pass system that the Crown had in place at the time. And then the land was confiscated and reserves created that were not on the papakainga. So our people, when they came home, couldn't literally move home. So that's a little snapshot.
Yeah, and like I say, I'll put some links in the show notes, because there's so much more to that whole story. But man, it just breaks my heart hearing it again.
Kia ora.
So you were involved in those negotiations with the government, with the Crown. What was that process of negotiation like? Because this was different to like treaty land settlements and stuff, wasn't it? It was something else entirely. That's
right. So the first and only reconciliation process of its kind. Now, understanding that Minister Finlayson, who's key in this story, did it with his Attorney General hat on. Whereas if you're a tribe or a claimant and you settle with the Crown, he or other ministers would do it with their settlement portfolio hat on. So it was an out-of-settlement arrangement. However, I would say that it is still a Crown process. So you can call it something different, but really the parameters are set by the Crown. We work within them in the circumstances, nevertheless. So, Minister Finlayson was critical, and Yeah, he's got a new book out, and I would urge you to read that. Maybe you could pop that up.
Yeah.
It's on my Facebook as well, the I Tangata link.
Yeah, I will.
And the reconciliation process with parihaka for him was, like the tūhoe one, was one of his most difficult and moving for him. And particularly the apology that we negotiated. I know it sounds a bit arbitrary and crude to say that, but we did have to negotiate the apology. And even the historical accounts, which are agreed Crown Māori historical accounts for every treaty settlement in the country, you sit down with Crown historians and the legislators, and you argue over every word and the gravity of that word.
Yeah.
So if your tupuna were killed, which we would say murdered, you're not allowed to use the word murder. You're not even allowed to use the word killed. It's a not for the faint-hearted process, and parihaka was no different.
Yeah, that's tough.
You would have to say conflict, not war.
Yeah.
Even invasion, it's like skirmish, incident.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's got to be rough when you're on the receiving end, and then the one who's getting ready to do the apologising is the one who holds the power and did hold the power, and that's why there was an issue in the first place, Gee, that's tough.
Yeah, it is. You never get desensitised. You get stronger at dealing with it, but it's a battle. You go in with your armour on. The Bible calls us to that, and you use your armour, those parts of your armour, really wisely for different battles. And truth is the part of the armour that you use. If you go in with the truth or the facts, then as Minister Finlayson said when he received horrible letters from the public after apologising for the rape of parihaka woman, the facts are the facts. And I remember him saying that to the media in such a, quite an abrasive way. But I appreciated that because, he was in the battle too, because he's representing the Crown and he's got people behind him saying, prove it, prove it, prove it. So I think, again, recognising everyone's role in this picture, that not everyone is always the enemy. But be smart, understand who you're dealing with and what their role is, and work with that. Yeah, never give up on that opportunity that you have with that person at that point in time to, with the Spirit of God, wairua tapu at play, to influence the way they see things. It's possible. I've seen it happen. I've seen in the Māori ward someone who 5 minutes before they submitted and voted in favour of the Māori ward were your typical racist. And I knew them. I'd met with them and argued with them before, and it was like, oh well, we know what he's going to say today. He sat there, and from hearing the other people and what they had to say, I could see his body, like he was sweating, he was going red, and his body he was physically affected by whatever it is he was going through. And then at the end, he said, after what I've heard today, after all these years, I changed my mind. I don't see any problem why there shouldn't be a Māori ward in Stratford. It was just, a little Taranaki township.
Yeah.
And his mates who were there to oppose the Māori ward were like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And we were like, what is he doing?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But you could see it.
Yeah.
You could just see the power of what the people had to say and the way they said it. They weren't throwing stones at him. They were just saying, this is my experience. This is my town too. We worked at the freezing works together. I know your parents. I know your grandparents. We went to school together. What are we doing? What's the problem? And he changed within a 5-minute process. It was the most amazing thing to witness.
That's incredible.
So your voice, what you bring to a conversation, no matter how you might think insignificant it is, there is always the potential to change someone's mind, someone's heart.
Yeah. Is it true that when you received what Minister Finlayson was going to say at the apology, that you gave it back and told him to rewrite it in his own words?
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
These the tactics of the battle, you know, and I don't mean that disrespectfully. I mean, the relationship is two-way, right? Statement, response, conversation. You don't go in and have a table card, trump card, and go, that's the way it is today. Lump it, like it or lump it. So it was a little bit of that. It was like, hang on a minute, hang on. No. We'll tell you how it's going to be done, and then you will. Look, there were times in the battle where you chose to do that, and then you reserved your temptation to do that.
Yeah.
Because you can't do it all the time. You know, you just lose the integrity of the conversation.
But he obviously responded to it.
Yes, not very well.
Right.
Being told to go away and start again is an affront to one's intelligence, to one's intention, to one's just wanting to get this done and over the line. I've heard that so much in the settlement process. Oh, we need to get this over the line, and every part of me just crumbles inside, even though I know I too am contributing to this process in a very, as a leader for our people. So don't sort of do the whole, oh no, that's the Crown, that's not me. It's like, no, own it. You're a part of it. But you don't use that tactic all the time. Yeah. Because people get sick of that. They're like, oh, here we go again.
After so many years for your people and the lengthy negotiations that you were part of, this day finally came when there was an apology from the Crown and apologising for those atrocities that were committed against your people and your whenua, in the name of the Crown. What was that like for you on an emotional level that day?
Yeah, it's when you're in a position of leadership, you have to, for an event like that, of the magnitude that it was, you can't deal with your own emotions at the time. Number one, I had to forgive the Crown for its apology before it apologised prior to the day. So for me, that was a spiritual thing. That I couldn't go into that day waiting to hear the apology, see how I feel, then receive it in my heart, decide whether I forgive or not. I did all of that before the day. I had to. For me. And so on the day, I focused on the tupuna, the ancestors, and it was for them. It was all for them that day. I mean, we're the living remnants, yes. It was for our people who were there, but it was for them. I was very clear. And that kept me strong in the way that I delivered, the way I stood, behaved that day. Afterwards, again, it was my journey with my faith that took a whole new turn. Yeah. I basically, at the end of my speech, I used scripture from Isaiah about setting the captives free and freeing the brokenhearted and no longer being enslaved and imprisoned. And I knew I could stand on that because our tupuna Te Whiti used the book of Isaiah. And it wasn't a scripture they ever used. So I was quite deliberate in using something that I saw was of benefit for this time. And I had people coming up to me afterwards going, hey, where'd you get that from? Hey, I didn't know you were a follower of Christ. Hey, I didn't know, And I was like, oh, well, cat's out of the bag now.
Yeah.
And literally I've gone on another journey after that, which has helped me heal because it's a series of ongoing days of healing, that process. And I even was hopeful that one day that a one-off event would make everything better. Because you kind of do, Oh, cool. Consider it settled and done. Doesn't work like that. Yeah. And that's okay. But for my faith, I think I'd be quite messed up. And, I see the claimants who take these settlements to their conclusion. Well, it's not the conclusion. It is beginning of the end. And Ruakere Hond said that on that day, te tīmatanga o te whakarutanga. So we need to treat it as such. It's not the end. There's always themes, there's always symbols, and we needed that symbolism, we needed that day to commit ourselves to a better future, and that's in everything we do. And we're still struggling in those areas, the way we talk to each other when we meet at parihaka. We've got a long way to go, but we have something to commit to. Hey, we said it's the new dawn. What does that mean? What does that mean? We shine a lot of light on the crown, and we have to shine it on ourselves. Keep shining it on ourselves, revealing these things that no longer serve us.
And I was in my mid-30s before I ever heard the story of parihaka. And then the story just blew my mind that there was this level of, amazing passive resistance. There's stories of the children going out to feed the soldiers as they were surrounding parihaka. And, the amazingly beautiful moments of what life can be like when you approach it in a way that isn't about trying to take the power, but trying to be graceful and trying to be humble, even in the face of huge oppression. And so, I discovered this story, and first of all, it blew my mind that it existed, and I'd never heard of it. And then I heard that, Gandhi knew these stories. That was part of what had inspired Mahatma Gandhi and over in India, was he knew stories from parihaka and from other places. And I'm like, how did he know it? Like, we never got taught it, And not to mention that there's a far more significant story to remember on November 5th than Guy Fawkes,
Yeah.
What is your hope for Aotearoa when it comes to these stories of parihaka?
It's very simple, that they be known in the way that our people tell the story. Parihaka are going through a process at the moment of putting education resources around that. So it really is, our way of telling it, because some of the other reading that I'm sure you'll share with people, it's pretty heavy. It's pretty, academic, a lot of it. So hearing that story through our voice, I look forward to our people producing those resources. Visit parihaka, come. Have your own journey. Don't rely on other people, commit to that journey yourself. But it is a source of inspiration for the nation, and when you see these stories, you'll understand why. Just because you know the history, it doesn't mean you're complicit, because I think that's the way people feel, that if I learn it and know it, then I'm going to be blamed for it or blame myself for it. Sure, that's a process of healing non-Māori have to go to when they understand the story and how horrible it is, but that's part of it. You're not culpable. You're just, aware. Yeah, so, open door every 18th and 19th of every month. We have people from all over the world come. And so I encourage people to come, because you'll learn a lot more about life than the story of parihaka. You'll learn more about yourself and where you're at. It's quite a convicting space, Yeah, and as I've just said, it's not your fault. You're not culpable. You're not complicit, but you confront your own character. Yeah, and then you start to apply it to your own areas of your life. How do I resolve disputes? How am I stout-hearted? How do I maintain peace in my family? Then you'll start to think of things in your family and your work life. You're like, right, I know the story now. How can I use those giftings that they had to contribute to parts of my life that need work? It is hard work. You'll come away from parihaka with more work to do, for sure.
We began this kōrero by talking about you being a mama. So to finish off, when it comes to growing up Māori, how different or not is the world that your daughter's growing up in to the one that you grew up in? And I guess what are your hopes for the Aotearoa that she will know as she grows up?
One practical thing is that she has always known me with a moko kauai. She's a whāngai, she was gifted to us, and had her baby shower scheduled, and I've been meaning to get my moko kauai for a long time. My grandmother had one, my mother passed before she could, and baby shower was coming, and I thought, I want her to know me as a mother with a moko kauai. I want that to be her reality. And even now she'll grab my face and go, Mama, pirangi au moko kauai. I want one of those. So that's her reality. And it was to do with her coming into the world.
And for those who don't know what a moko kauai is, this is your cultural facial tattoo as a Māori woman,
Yes.
which is stunning, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I love it. So that's one thing.
Yeah, that's cool.
Her in the world, it's not going to be easy. There'll be other battles that she'll be a part of. But the artillery in her armour will be well polished. More so than mine was, and my grandmother and my grandmothers before me. And I'm glad that she'll have better support. But neither do I want to sugarcoat it and say that she won't have other battles to fight. I'm assuming she wants to get into this stuff.
Yeah.
Probably shouldn't, eh? She might want to be a carpenter, which is really cool because we need heaps of those, or she just might want to do other things, but I just want her to be proud of who she is and not afraid.
Awesome. Oh, thank you so much for giving time to talk to us today. Thank you for sharing both the joy and the pain of what your journey's been like, and just giving us a bit of insight into some of the ways that you have walked through the mamae, but also the celebration of who you are as Māori of Taranaki. So thank you for what you're doing to bring a bit of heaven down to earth.
Kia ora. Thank you for your mahi, you and your whānau. Tēnā koe.
Hello, hello heaven. Will I hear you whisper to come near?
Stories like that of parihaka are awful and yet beautiful. They are heartbreaking and yet hope-filling. What an inspiration to live a life of non-violent resistance to any authority or system that oppresses those who don't hold the power. And it's so awesome to know that there are people like Puna, and many like her, who are prepared to follow the lead of the likes of Te Whiti o Rongomai and Tohu Kākahi. Puna, thank you for who you are, for what you do. Here is a blessing for you. Puna, may the words of your 14-year-old self stay rooted in your heart, inspiring you on as you now apply your adult wisdom to the passion of youth. Whenever you lose hope that things could change, may you be surprised by a racist who changes his mind, or by a law that comes about more speedily than you expect. But even when you don't see things changing, may you know that your mahi is now laying more foundation for changes that will be seen by others in years to come. May your faith continue to hold you, as your hope is not rooted in battles you may win or lose, but in the one who strives for justice and the reconciliation of all things. May you know that there will always be people in your corner, that you stand on the shoulders of so many, and that you are surrounded by those who love you and tautoko your work. May your daughter grow to be her best self, held in the knowledge that she is loved beyond measure by a mama and a papa who would give their lives for her. And lastly, may you know that you are seen, you are heard, and you are loved. Thanks to Strahan for the music and Rangi for the karakia. Join me next time when I kōrero with Scotty Reeve. We talk about his years working with the youth of Wellington, his passion for those on the margins of society, living in community, heartbreak and loss and surviving the dark times. And we talk about his book and podcast, 21 Elephants. Until then, me inoi tātou.